This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest business story of the week, what we each think is the most remarkable business story, a sleeper story, one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and so we kind of peek under the radar, if that's possible, and kind of pull it out from under the radar. It's a terrible kind of metaphor, isn't it? I don't think it really works here. And then our favourite story as well. It is a very competitive environment, and as a result, we need a judge to help us pick a winner, to decide a winner in each category, and then an overall winner who gets to take home the Fear and Greed trophy. And that judge is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Okay, well, let's jump straight into it, and we'll go straight for the biggest story. Now, last week, Sean, I think we made a new ruling that whoever wins overall in the previous week can go first in the biggest story category for the following week.
So who did win last week?
Look, and I was just going to I don't even know why I brought it up, because the only reason I brought it up was to tell you that I'm ignoring that decision from last week, and I'm going to go right. And I'm going to go first because, of course, I lost last week tragically and unfairly. But the biggest story this week is all about CEOs, two CEOs in particular. So I'll start with really the one who grabbed all the headlines this week. Woolworths CEO Brad Banducci announcing his retirement this week after, I think, 6 pretty successful years in the top job. And maybe he was always going to do it this week. Unfortunately, though, from the outside, it does look like a pretty direct response to his extremely uncomfortable Four Corners interview on Monday night about competition in the sector, where he walked out on the journalist. Now, walkouts, unless you're on Married at First Sight, and I know that you are a Married at First Sight viewer, Adam, they are never a good look. And in maths, it adds a lot of drama when someone does kind of storm out. Not so good in corporate Australia and at the very, very top of corporate Australia. So now Woolies will have a new boss, an internal appointment. So that is good succession planning. They've clearly kind of done a good job in that respect. But still, the brand has copped a bit of a hammering this week. The other CEO who pulled the pin this week was Virgin Australia CEO Jane Herdlicker. Now, this came as a bit of a surprise, really, considering she's done a pretty impressive job of rebuilding the airline following its collapse during the pandemic. She even saw it return to profitability last financial year. But for a while now, there's been talk of an IPO to see Virgin listed, but that's not going to happen without a CEO, and it's not as though there was a replacement kind of ready to go. They are now kind of embarking on a search for the right person to succeed Jane Herdlicker. And now, I know I'm inviting criticism here from you probably, Sean, but I'm just going to expand my story ever so slightly.
Excellent idea. To
another CEO, because we are speaking of CEOs here. And I just wonder how new Qantas CEO Vanessa Hudson is feeling after her first half-year results. A pretty good set of numbers, pre-tax profit of $1.245 billion, down a bit from last year, obviously. But the bad news for investors, which is good news for customers, is that airfares are falling and are expected to keep falling. Plus, she's going to have a new boss with John Mullen replacing Richard Goyder as Qantas chair. Now, Mullen is already the chair of Brambles and Treasury Wine Estate, so he's going to be a tad busy. Now, I know I said this is just about two CEOs, but it's what I call a tactical misdirection. It is about business leaders, and put them all together into the great kind of mixing pot of corporate Australia. This is the biggest story of the week.
Oh, for goodness sake, Michael.
Yeah, even I acknowledge it was probably a bit of a stretch.
A little bit of froth and giggle, an extraordinary dummy spit on national TV, a CEO resignation or two, and you think it's a great story.
I do.
Oh, please, Adam, I appeal to your very, very worthy criteria, and perhaps you can remind us what that criteria is, because obviously Michael has forgotten what it is.
Topicality, timeliness, economic impact, very important, subjective bias, mine, and melodrama by each of you.
I think we just ticked all of the boxes with the biggest story. We can move on to most remarkable. Declare me the winner, Adam, and let's move on. Hang on, do we actually have to hear Sean's first?
I'd quite like to.
Oh, okay, fine. If we must, please.
Yeah.
On with it, Sean.
This was the busiest week of earnings season of all. And we had, I could go through every earnings result, but let's not. Let's just pick the ones that really, really matter. So I've gone for the 3 big miners. They've reported over the past 7 days, maybe 9 days, if we put BHP in there as well, might be a little bit more than a week, but just park that. These are the companies that earn all that income, not just for shareholders, but for Australia as well. Every single one of us, all that tax they pay, yep, because they dig up all that iron ore, yep, really massive economic impact. The companies, they employ tens of thousands of people. How'd they go?
Tell us, Sean.
Yeah, not so good.
This has become a pantomime. He's behind you.
Behind you. Rio Tinto declared a higher than expected dividend after announcing a full year $15.4 billion profit. Wow, $15.4 billion on the back of stronger iron ore prices, but it's actually the lowest result in about 5 years. Iron ore provided Rio with close to 92% of its earnings, perhaps a little too reliant on that commodity, I suggest. Rio's profits are now less than half the record earnings posted by the miner 2 years ago. Okay, they were extreme earnings 2 years ago because commodity prices were so high, but it just shows how far some of these miners have fallen. Fortescue Metals, that was kind of the exception this earnings season amongst the miners. It actually announced a 41% jump in first half net profit to about $5 billion. That's on the back of those higher than expected iron ore prices. Fortescue also announced a much higher dividend relative to a year ago. I love this fact. Now, that dividend is worth $1.2 billion to the family interests, is how we now put it, of Fortescue chair Andrew Forrest and Nicola Forrest. They separated last year, so just doesn't go to one of them. It goes to the family interests. Anyway, $1.2 billion in dividends. Throw in BHP's result last week where it had to write down the value of its nickel assets. Its share price is down about 3% since then. And you just have the miners not looking as pretty as they once did. Lots of other miners reporting. Generally a bloodbath in the lithium and nickel sectors. Coal companies aren't doing much better. They are doing somewhat better, but not a lot better. So the wrap up. You know that super duper resources boom that we seem to keep having? Ain't happening. Not going to save us this time. Big, big story. Adam.
I think this is a great battle between the headlines of the CEOs and the bigger story, in my view, is the stories in commodities and just how much money is being made here. So if you look at the economic impact of the two, sure, the spectacle of the CEOs at Qantas, at Virgin, at Woolworths has been really, really interesting. But the scale of money involved in mining is immense, and the royalties and the taxes that flow to state and federal governments are so important. We wouldn't have survived economically through COVID as well as we have to now without this sort of mineral strength. So it is actually, I think, a clear winner on the biggest story of the week.
A clear winner?
Did you notice, Adam? Yeah, it's all right. I was stunned by the winner last week too. Did you notice when you started talking about this, you heard Michael goes, oh. He just had this came out of his mouth as soon as you started talking.
An audible groan.
It reminds me of Maggie, your puppy dog. You know, when you're at Adam's place and we're kind of preparing for shows and that, and Adam starts talking spreadsheets, inevitably you get Maggie, who's always at his feet going, not this again.
It's like, oh dear, must we?
That's it.
I must say, though, that the spectacle of Brad Banducci's walkout of the ABC was really something.
It really was, wasn't it?
I actually had a lunch during the week at McGrath-Nicol, and Angus Grigg was there, who is the ABC reporter from Four Corners. And notwithstanding, I think Angus was wearing the same shirt that I saw him wearing on the show, which was pointed out to him. He did say it was really extraordinary. He was just sort of sitting there and like, oh, wow, is this really happening? And I think the rest of Australia looked at him and went, wow, is this really happening?
Same thing, yeah. All captured on camera.
To Angus's credit, he certainly wasn't crowing about it or anything like that. He was just sort of saying he was just surprised that it was going on. Some journalists do crow about that stuff, and Angus isn't that style of person. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Much to his credit.
Yeah, much to his credit. Anyway, I think he was amazed as the rest of us.
That is extraordinary. All right, 1-0. And apparently a clear winner for the first category. I think that actually hurts more than anything else.
Sorry, I'll be less effusive in my descriptions.
I had a few messages via Instagram because obviously we've started doing a lot more content now on social media on Instagram and TikTok and the like. If you search for Fear and Greed podcast, you'll find it, and you'll see a lot of videos, particularly of Sean. And Sean, you get bonus points for your video this week with the Qantas, on the Qantas results and the plane noise that you made when you moved the plane across the screen.
What about the outfit?
The outfit is something, but you need to make sure you have the sound turned up so you can hear the plane noise. It is the best. But anyway, some of the other messages I've had were just in general kind of outrage about the judging from last week. And they finish with hashtag Team Michael. Can you believe this?
I like it. I like it.
How many accounts do you have, Michael?
It's not me, Adam. Move on. 1-0. Okay. Most remarkable story. Sean, please.
Okay. What is happening to competition policy in this country? That's what I ask. This week, ANZ won the go-ahead for its $4.9 billion bid for Suncorp after the Australian Competition Tribunal overturned the ACCC's concerns about the deal hurting competition. It's been a long, drawn-out saga, almost 2 years worth of toing and froing. The green light means ANZ will absorb Queensland-based Suncorp's home loans, which total about $67 billion. Last year, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission ruled against the deal, arguing it could, and I quote, further entrench an oligopoly, lead to reduced competition in home loans, in agribusiness and business banking, particularly in Queensland. ANZ boss Shane Elliott has been saying, you know, it's such a competitive market. ANZ needs some help to take on the CBAs of the world, so bringing Suncorp in will actually increase competition. Basically, the tribunal seems to agree. The tribunal itself mentioned the strength of Macquarie in home lending and the use of mortgage brokers. About 2/3 of us use a mortgage broker when getting a home loan now. Okay, hands up here, you two jokers. Hands up here. Who thinks there's more competition in the banking sector with all these neobanks and online offerings and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see? 3 out of 3. But my point, when a regulator says one thing and then its ruling is overturned, it just creates confusion. It makes it really difficult for the business community to operate. I'm blaming the ACCC on this one. It got it wrong. And pretty much everyone knew it got it wrong back then. The fact that the tribunal overturned the decision is pretty remarkable. I don't think I can, well, no, I know I can't remember it happening at a major ASX-listed company previously. So to have this go on for 2 years and then overturn the ACCC ruling, I think that is really remarkable. But it also throws this whole competition policy issue kind of up into the air a bit. And anyway, fairly remarkable story for mine, Michael.
The most remarkable story for me is a very short one. It's the remarkable gap between house prices and unit prices, to the extent that it's almost creating two different classes of home ownership in this country. Now, there's always been a difference between them. Houses have always sold for premium over units, but we found out this week just how much that premium has soared. It hasn't just soared, it has skyrocketed. And this data this week, released by CoreLogic, shows just how much that is. Just 4 years ago, the premium for a capital city house was 16.7%. This is the average. Now, that's jumped to 45.2%. 16.7% to 45.2%, or almost $294,000. So on average, if you want a house over a unit, you're paying almost $300,000 more. And that is just the average. If you're in a market like Sydney, the gap is way, way, way bigger.
And is it bigger?
Way bigger.
Way.
How much bigger?
Like, I don't even know. Way. Like it is way bigger, Sean.
Way.
It is way bigger. It's because of rising land values, lack of supply, desire for more space, but it also compounds the problem then for first home buyers battling kind of the unaffordability of the market, and also those trying to upsize perhaps as kind of families grow. And the other thing about this is just how quickly it has happened. Just 4 years for that premium to skyrocket. Just remarkable. And, Adam... And wait,
there's more.
Considering the value of the Australian housing market is more than $10 trillion, the economic impact of this story cannot be denied. It is the most remarkable of the week.
I'm exhausted listening to you, Michael, on that one. That was quite spectacular.
I put a lot into it. I'm spent. I need a moment. Go on, Adam.
Sean, great point.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ACCC and the tribunal here came in the end to the right decision, but gee, it took a long time. And that lack of certainty that's a result to businesses is really important. And so I think that was a great and remarkable story. I have to give it to Michael on this one. The economic impact is huge, and his melodrama, it was fine.
Yeah. I'm happy with this result, Adam. What I would call this is a good loss. Yeah,
Yes.
because you know
An
that
honourable loss.
Yeah, it's honourable because I think Michael's was better, but it's not like I'm going to lose by 5 or 10 points because mine was pretty good. So it's like a good loss.
Unlike in the first category where there was a clear winner, apparently. Fine. 1-1.
Well done on that one, though. Well done on that one, Michael. That's a deserved winner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We will take a very quick break and we will come back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. Okay, we are looking for a sleeper story of the week. So a sleeper is a story that's not getting the attention that it deserves, or that we feel it deserves. So it's quite subjective, really, or that's going to become a bigger story further down the track. Sean, you went first in the last one, so if you don't mind, I'll go first in this one.
Sure.
Okay, so I did a bit of appearing under rocks. I lifted a few rocks and just had a bit of a sniff around.
How'd that go?
Look, got a nose full of dirt. No, but you know what the sleeper story is here this
What
week?
is it, Mike? What is it?
I'm gonna tell you this one. I'm gonna tell you this one quietly because I don't want everyone to hear it. Did we hear the groundwork being laid this week for our next referendum?
No.
Yes, we did.
Oh, sorry.
So let me tell you more. That was a rhetorical question, right, Sean. It didn't require you to answer and definitely didn't require you to say no. Now, Anthony Albanese has publicly declared his support for 4-year terms. Now, at the moment, of course, the term of the federal government is just 3 years. The states all have 4 years. And Albo says that's the way to go federally too, right? It makes sense, you would argue, potentially from a political perspective. The vast majority of lower houses globally have either 4 or 5 year terms. And the argument generally is that it gives more time to bed policies in, more time to implement reform, more time to kind of argue the case without it then needing to go straight to an election. Less time spent speculating over when the election is going to be, more time governing, less time campaigning, all right? But to do it in Australia, of course, requires a referendum, and the success rate for referendums or referenda in this country is not good at all. We saw that obviously with the voice vote last year, and in fact, the 4-year term issue has actually been put to the people once before back in 1988 by Bob Hawke, and then on that occasion, just 33% of the country supported it. Not one state backed it. It's been brought up since then too. Kevin Rudd actually promised a referendum back in 2007. Obviously never happened. The extension to 4 years got bipartisan support in 2017 when it was floated again. So it's there. It is there, bubbling just beneath the surface. And maybe, just maybe, in fact, not maybe, definitely.
No, I think maybe's a better way to put it.
This week, we saw the seeds being planted by the Prime Minister for a future referendum. In the meantime, we have to have an election by the end of May next year, and the 2025 budget has been brought forward to March to accommodate it. But just wait. Just wait, both of you.
Okay.
4-year terms, another referendum. This is the political sleeper story of the year. It could be a Walkley Award winning story. I mean, that might be an overreach.
Is one of the criteria credibility, Adam?
It hasn't been explicitly so, but I thought more implied. But you could be onto something.
Maybe we should actually make that one of the criteria.
Are you serious? This is some fine investigative journalism.
Sniffing under rocks.
I was turning over rocks. I was poking around in the centipedes and the slaters underneath, and this is what I found. This story.
Magnificent stuff.
The seeds of a story planted by Anthony Albanese. Go on, Sean. What have you got?
Hard to compete with that, I've got to say.
Don't be scared, Sean. Don't be intimidated.
I'll try. I now have a huge range of options. Amid all the excitement around earnings, we didn't really talk enough about real wages. Annual wages grew at 4.2% last year, their fastest pace since March 2009, well above the pre-pandemic average of 2.5%, according to figures released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Australian wages growth, as measured by the Wage Price Index, rose 0.9% in the December quarter, Both private and public sector wages were up by about the same amount for the quarter. Normally, private sector does all the heavy lifting. Public sector, because nurses and aged care workers and people like that got big pay rises, that did a lot of the heavy lifting. Point is, 4.2% for the year, 0.9% for the quarter. As inflation has slowed and wages have increased, there's finally been growth in real wages, which actually should start easing some of the cost of living pressures. This is really, really important. And I'm not being melodramatic. It actually is really, really important. Real wages in December actually rose 0.1%. It's been a long time since real wages have risen. I mean, people can buy more with their take-home pay. That's what that's basically saying. Maybe it's only a cup of coffee at this point, but it's a start. And it's really important because the employment market is slowing and we're getting this real wages growth, which is significant when you're trying to keep the economy growing. We'll look back at this and wonder why we didn't make more of it. That's my call on this one. Has that got Adam all over it, that story?
Yeah, it does. It does.
And look at his coffee he's drinking too.
Oh.
He's drinking his coffee, as I'm saying. Is that a Voodoo X one, Adam?
It is short and very satisfying.
It is a Voodoo X. And you know what? You guys are just here just swanning around drinking your coffee. I will actually mention where the coffee comes from because here I am doing the actually, I'm almost off to the chiropractor today because my back is sore from carrying this team today on this.
What's that got to do with the Voodoo X coffee?
Well, it's just because you guys are just here drinking the coffee and I'm here to tell you where we got it from. Yeah. It came from Blue Chip Communications, which is a supporter of Fear and Greed. And they power financial services companies with PR and marketing. And then they power, apparently, the two of you with Voodoo X coffee. Whereas here I am drinking a lightly sparkling water.
Well, Michael, may I suggest a change?
Yes, please. And the water is only lightly sparkling because it's still water and I shook it. I self-carbonated.
Back to peering under rocks, Michael. Back to peering under rocks.
That's right. Anyway, thank you to Blue Chip Communication for our Voodoo X coffee. And thank you, Sean, for your contribution to the sleeper story of the week. But Adam, did you prefer the referendum story?
Look, I didn't prefer the referendum story, Michael. It's a shock, I know.
Bang.
I know it's a shock. Look, I'd say it's a mild distraction, and it's certainly been around for a while, so it could be asleep for a lot longer, that particular story. Real wages, imagine if they didn't surpass inflation. Imagine the story then if real wages were going down. And just in terms of the political and the practical story, for all the reasons that you outlined, Sean, I think both are incredibly important. Obviously, greater spending power is a good thing. Politically too, if the Albanese government had not been able to show this, that would have been quite damaging. And so I think they can almost say that they've achieved this or helped to achieve it. So at a practical level, I think it's a clear winner.
Can you stop emphasising the margin, please, Adam?
You're still in with a chance, Michael. You just need to come home with a wet sail for favourite story.
Fine, I will. But Sean is going to go first.
Okay.
Because that way I can finish with a bang. Ooh. That's very erotic. Please go on.
Only to you. My favourite story is the one about the second inquiry into Star Entertainment Sydney Casino. The state's casino regulator said it isn't satisfied that the company has made enough changes to regain its licence, so has asked Adam Bell SC, the Sydney barrister who conducted an earlier inquiry into Star's Sydney Casino, to run the review. The outcome will determine if the Independent Casino Commission in New South Wales allows the Star to keep operating. It will specifically consider whether Star has enough money to operate properly and whether its management, reporting lines and compliance are adequate. It's not my favourite story because the Star has to go through another inquiry. It's my favourite story because this is a regulator actually showing its teeth. So often we hear companies make undertakings saying we'll do better in the future, and then we hear nothing. I have no idea whether all these companies that have gone to the ACCC and provided undertakings, whether or not they've done it or not. I reckon a bunch of them probably hasn't. But this time, the regulator said it's concerned that many of the changes have been pushed through by the state-appointed manager rather than the company itself. It's showing its teeth. Now remember, Mr. Bell, in his first report published a couple of years ago, found Star was unsuitable to hold its license, describing its operations as a case study of unethical conduct and cultural failure. I mean, $900 million of dirty money was washed through the casino. Finally, we have a regulator showing its teeth. I think that is really, really good for the economy, but also for society. Hence, my favourite story of the week. Michael.
That is a good story. That is actually a really good story. And I like your take on it. Sure. My favourite story this week is apparently, though, it's not enough now that Australian businesses need to deal with kind of non-stop cyber attacks and people trying to access your data and spread it around online. Because who needs cyber criminals when the Australian government will apparently do it for you? Up to 400 of the nation's biggest service providers, think kind of law firms and accountants and consultants and the like, have had fee rates and personal information released to all of their competitors. It goes without saying, of course, that this data was all commercial in confidence, but there it was, an embedded spreadsheet. So, Adam, this has already got you written all over it because it's got spreadsheets in the story. An embedded spreadsheet in an email sent out to service providers by the Department of Finance is not exactly the kind of thing that you want your competitors having. The best part is it's not the first time this has happened either, because last year the Department of Health this time accidentally leaked the billing rates of around 400 firms to 22 service providers. Once is an accident. Twice is a little bit odd, right? And now I'm feeling like, after me looking under rocks for referendum stories before, it does feel like now I'm becoming a little bit of a conspiracy theorist.
No.
But hear me out. Just hear me out on this one. We talk a lot about improving competition. We've obviously seen what the supermarket industry is going through. Maybe, and this is thinking outside the box a little bit, it's all part of a slightly unusual effort to improve competition within kind of business. Maybe not. It may not be the case. It may just be someone not triple checking before they hit send. And when they do that, they would have that moment when they realize what they've done. And I just want you to put yourself in their shoes for a moment and just realize that they have hit send on this and they don't have that kind of function set up on their emails where you can undo it for 10 seconds or kind of 30 seconds afterwards, and the email's gone out. There's nothing they can do to get it back. What do you do? What is the first step that you would take? I suggest cover up.
Totally. Support that.
Yep. I suggest the best thing to do, deny. Say, it wasn't me. And then they say, we can see it came from your email address. Like, I was hacked. And there you go.
Because obviously this is a hacking story. So there's credibility in that. That's the thing.
Because isn't that what people do now when their social media posts something kind of like inflammatory or something? They go, no, sorry, it wasn't me. My social media was hacked. So therefore, my unsolicited advice to this individual from within the Department of Finance, say you were hacked to get out of jail free card. There we go. My favorite story.
Do you know what? I wonder whether that individual, whether it was that 10-second thing or they'd gone home, had dinner with the family, were just lying in bed, kind of woke up in the middle of the night and thought, oh, was there ever an embedded spreadsheet in that one that I sent? oh my God, I think there was. Oh, no.
Well, the thing was that their boss had actually tried to call them to say, look, something's gone wrong. But that person was going, nah, right to disconnect. You can't contact me till tomorrow. No, we'll deal with this between 9 and 5 tomorrow. Anyway, Adam, over to you.
Great battle. Both quite bleak favourite stories, I have to say. Maybe. But Sean, I did like how he brought it home. Regulators showing its teeth. It is good, really good. And look, I honestly can't, for all the reasons, topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, melodrama, they had it all, and both of you brought a lot of melodrama to each of those, so really did bring it home. I have to call this one a dead heat. So that leaves it story count, Sean 2.5, Michael 1.5.
So it's a dead heat. Let's go to the let's go to the points.
Let's just call it like 90-90 and move on. Is that what you're trying to say, Michael?
Okay. Do you want to know the actual points?
Of course we do.
Too right we do.
Okay. Also a dead heat. 91 apiece.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh.
So Sean wins on the story count, but scores are level.
So which one did I lose on?
Well, you lost on the remarkable story with competition policy.
I must have lost by a lot because I was a clear winner in two.
ACCC getting it wrong.
I'd like you to redo your numbers because I was a clear winner on 2.
Steward's inquiry.
91 or a dead heat all round. Well, no, 2.5 to 1.5. Actually, it's not a dead heat.
So now look, because your stories were quite bleak on the favourite, can I tell you my favourite story of the week?
Oh, yeah. This is
right.
highly unorthodox, but yes.
Only on the basis that we get to judge it.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm getting my own criteria out. I have a list of 14 criteria I'm looking for here, Adam. But I'm not going to tell you what they are until after you've done the story. All right, go for it.
Okay. So on Wednesday on Sarah McDonald's ABC show, we had Debbie Harry being interviewed. She's got some concerts coming up here in Australia.
Oh, what's that I love? And it was a gas.
Yes. Heart of Glass. I think that was Sean, wasn't it?
I love Heart of Glass. I did not recognise that.
So Debbie Harry's talking to Sarah McDonald. She was running a bit late, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said, "No worries, I'll delay my interview to allow Debbie Harry to go to air on time." And he actually walked into the studio at the end, and they had a chat together. And so it was really lovely. The Prime Minister said it was great to talk to her. He has her early albums on vinyl and that Parallel Lines was his favourite. I thought, this is so cool. Debbie Harry was clearly impressed and said, "I hope that I can meet you in the flesh." Very good song reference title there. Yeah. And the Prime Minister responded, "I'll be hanging on the telephone for your call." And I just thought, that is awesome.
And what's the economic impact?
Yeah, it's going to struggle for economic impact.
You know what? It is actually a good story. It is, and we needed to end on something a little bit happier because we were a pretty miserable kind of bunch of stories today. So
I don't want to make too fine a point of it. Adam, can you just send through the spreadsheet? I'd like to see those calculations. How can I be a clear winner in 2 and very close on the other in a dead heat?
Picture coming shortly.
All right. Well, on that note of distrust between the team, thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn. Check out all of our videos and things on Instagram and TikTok and find us on X and Facebook as well. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.